Today, I want to welcome to the show Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance, the fantastic, dynamic, wonderful person, Dianna Booher. Welcome to the show, Dianna. Hello.
Thank you, Henry. It's good to be with you.
So we became friends because Dianna is a legend around here for books and speaking and coaching. And I joined something called the National Speakers Association, and she helped me with some of my material when I was doing that. I haven't done much speaking lately, but that got to know her and come to that very study where she helped me with things. And it's hard to believe I did a search on Google and said Dianna Booher books. I'm looking at that right now. And as I scroll down, you just keep scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. And it's kind of a phenomenal thing, but believe it or not, to all you viewers, she has actually written 50 books and sold 4 million copies, over 4 million, which is that a record? And this is business publishing, which is a bit different than fiction because it's not as big a market. But is there anyone that's written 50 books?
Probably the novelists. I don't know about
Yes.
business books or how-to books, but novelists, there's Danielle Steele and some of those that have sold, gazillion books. I've written a gazillion books.
Right. So for a business author, it's just phenomenal. And I'll read a little bit of her bio. So Dianna is a communication strategist, uh, consulting, coaching, teaching on executive presentations. She's a presentations expert, book writing, and publishing coach. She's a Hall of Famer speaker, and as you can imagine, her books have been published by the best and the biggest. Penguin Random House, Simon Schuster, McGraw Hill, and HarperCollins. So maybe a good place to start is you consulted for Fortune 500 companies. They still call you. What is it that you have been able to do that so many people like me over so many years have wanted your help and your expertise?
Basically, the book writing and the book publishing was sort of my entree into becoming an entrepreneur. I never started, even thinking about that or starting a business around it. But when the first business book came out, I was on an ABC lead into the news, had a little 3-minute segment, and I just had phenomenal results from that. People started calling like crazy. And even that first, before the book came out, I was calling clients and saying, hey, I'm the author of this forthcoming book. Could I come in and talk to you about helping your people communicate better? And people like to meet authors, I found out. So that's good. I couldn't be a football player or a movie star, couldn't throw a football. So I had to figure out what would give me the entree into calling on businesses, those Fortune 500 companies. And that's what did it, the publicity.
When you had a training business, it wasn't just you, but you had people that work for you and a whole training, consulting, coaching business.
Yes. At one point, I had 14 employees, which is not huge for big companies, but for consulting companies outside of, the McKinsey's, et cetera, that was a pretty good sized company. And on the books, every time I would create a book, I would turn it into a course and then train other people to go out and present it. And sometimes the Fortune 500 clients would call me and say, we have the trainers, they just need the material or the content. So I would license the content to them. But actually, Henry, I never, ever intended to develop a business. I didn't want to manage people. I wanted to maintain my lifestyle, the entrepreneur solo out there. And that's what I've always tried to do, even though I had other people going out and doing my programs.
And you sold that business, right?
Yes, I sold that business in 2017, and I still do some speaking, some keynotes, but try not to because I don't like to get on airplanes. But people still call me from the consulting business. The clients that I had with their executive has been at maybe IBM or Lockheed or Raytheon or whatever for 20 years, and then decides, hey, I want to expand my influence in a totally different way, and they want to write a book. So then they call and say, can you help me? Can you tell me what my options are? And sometimes they want me to just do one little thing, like think of a catchy book title. And other times they want me to lead them through the whole thing and marketing and launching it and whatever. So that's sort of a secondary entrepreneurial venture that started after I sold the training program, the training company in 2017.
Your latest book, Faster, Fewer, Better Emails, is just one example of so many different books where you'll pick a topic and expand on it and write a whole book, which people want to
Right.
read and buy, and which
You
publishers
know,
want to publish.
and I just stumbled on that idea and even the whole concept of writing how to and business books over a conversation we had long time ago. I was having lunch with a vice president of Exxon. This was the Shell Oil vice president. I knew two that sort of helped me get started by, referring me in or getting me an appointment. But we were at lunch on one Sunday after church, and he said, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I've finished a novel, finished my master's degree, finished a novel, but I'm really thinking about doing some other writing. And he said, oh, writing. Can you teach engineers to write? None of us can write, and he just laughed it off. And I said, that is my field. My academic training is in English and literature and writing. And so he said, yeah, we pay a lady big bucks to come in from Atlanta. We fly her down here to Houston to teach all of our engineers how to write engineering reports. He gets up from the table, goes out and brings this book, and he says, here's her book. And I noticed it was a self-published book. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. But I want to, if I do write a book, I want to sell it to a major publisher. And so immediately I got it in my head, hey, there is a need out here. There are lawyers, engineers, I'm sure a lot of systems and analysts and coders and all kind of people, doing white collar, pushing paper kind of work. And sure enough, that's what I got started doing. And then of course, once I got IBM, it called me and saw me on that little lead in that I was talking about. And they said, well, not only do we need help with writing, we need help with presentation skills. And so that's basically, I said, well, gee, I don't know anything about presentation skills. I'll have to write a book on it, do all the research, and then figure it out. And then I came back and they bought that course. And then they said, well, writing and speaking, presenting, that's the same thing as customer service. And I thought, customer service? No, that's not the same thing. And again, I had to go back to the drawing board and think about it. Yep, it's the same skills, it's the same issues, it's the same problem, people not communicating. And so then that led to another book, and that's how I just came up with this topic and this topic and this topic because of what my clients were saying to me they needed.
You were listening, and you had talked when we met some time ago that you really focused in on a product that you could sell forever. And I guess, every business has a product, and you have this talent, this work ethic, this experience, and it all built around a product of, I guess, communication. Would that cover everything?
Yes, that first business book was a book on writing, and it was written in the form of a report, sort of unusual. And that's the reason it got so much media attention. It was written like, here's a proposal that you might write, or a marketing report, or an engineering report. Very concise, I think just slightly over 100 pages. And so companies continued to call about that. And once I had invested, it took me 4 days to write that book. I asked different friends of mine who were already in the workforce, can you send me samples? Bad samples, good samples, I want to use them in this book. And of course, they deleted names and identifying information, but sent those on, and I actually used those samples. So that's the way I have always looked at it, is when you invest, writing a book is solo, very private thing. But once it's launched and you invested that time, whether it's 4 days, like that first book that I talked about on writing, or if it's 3 weeks, then you want to go back and be able to reap the benefits and resell it and resell it. And I had software companies come, Jacuzzi, you've heard the brand name Jacuzzi. They came, wanted to buy a software package and launch that. I had other company, Intercom was a big company that bought the rights to the material. I had another company that actually, I had 4 big spreads of different companies who had licensed the program in Wall Street Journal, in a technical journal, USA Today, all in 1 month. And again, I'm selling the same content that I'd spent 4 days developing for that first business book. And I'm just relicensing it and relicensing it. And even the courses that I developed off of the content off those books came from that material, that original research, and those samples that people sent me. So I've resold that, I think, probably 30 times. And 40 years from now, I am still getting royalties from those kind of things, from books 24/7. There's just all kind of licensing agents out there who want to develop products off of your knowledge, your concept, whatever you are as an entrepreneur, whatever service you have, whatever product. Maybe you have a product that you could turn into a service, or a service you could turn into a standalone product. But once you just keep thinking, how can I get a better return on that time that I spent up front developing it? And I found that writing a book is one of the easiest ways to do that.
Well, and you always seem to enjoy your work. You're always a very upbeat, positive person. I mean, and I mean, you found something you love, right? You're writing, you're helping people, you're coaching, all these things. What a wonderful goal to have. My dad always said, make sure you enjoy your work because you're going to do a lot of that.
That's true. And I'm glad you brought that up, Henry, because that reminds me of the original conversation I had. I talked about the engineer, the vice president of engineering at a major oil company. But even before that, the way I got started was finding something I like to do through a conversation. My husband was at that time was struggling with severe depression, and I knew he was not going to work anymore. There was no way he was going to be able to hold a job. I had two toddlers, and I knew I need to make a living. I had just done a little substitute teaching here and there just to get out of the house for things to do. But once I thought, gee, I'm going to have to be making this a living, I went to our business pastor at our church and I said, how am I going to do this? I've got two little kids. What can I do? And he said, Dianna, what do you like to do? And I said, well, I hadn't even really thought about it. And I said, well, I used to like to write English compositions in school, but how can you make a living doing that? And he said, no, I didn't ask you how you could make a living doing that. I asked you what you like to do. Figure out what you like to do, and then you'll figure out a way to make a living on it. So I went to the public library, checked it, went to the 800 section. It was before you could do all this research online. Went to the 800 section, checked 30 or 40 books, and taught myself, what I had to do, what was the process. So again, that sprang from just doing something you love to do. And then, as the friend back then told me, figure out a way to make a living at it.
Well, and when you were a young girl, child, would you have ever thought that you would be a writer? Would you ever thought that you would be an entrepreneur? Uh,
Absolutely not. I didn't even know enough. The way I tackled it back then was just, I want to be a writer. And my thought was, since I'd never met anybody, didn't have anybody to interview, talk, or the internet to research it, it was just, okay, put up a card table in the bedroom and put your typewriter on it. And we had just gotten into computers back then. And, type it up, get to the end, send it off, and wait for the movie version to come out. I mean, that was how green I was about the whole process. And I did start off, by the way, writing a novel. That was my master's, the concept, or come up with an idea. I want to be an entrepreneur. But when that book, the first book out, and the Houston Chronicle did a huge spread on it, I had 32 calls when that Houston Chronicle story broke from people in the Houston area. Maybe all of them weren't in the Houston area. I don't remember now, but I know I had 32 calls to my answering service and say, come out and help us. And so that's how the company developed. I went, oh, okay, I could turn this into a course. And that took me 4 days, as I mentioned, to do it. But I never planned that. My parents weren't in business. My dad was a farmer. So I just never thought this is what you can do for a living. But it just developed. The company developed around me doing what I love to do and figuring it out. And I had great mentors, by the way, that helped me figure it out, because I didn't know a thing about running a business or hiring people or managing finances, etc.
what are your plans now? Are you going to continue coaching, writing, helping clients? Obviously, you don't need to do this anymore. You've got this fantastic unmatched career, but you love your work. But I know I think you are a movie star, actually, or they'll make a movie after you. With your parents, you're still alive, you're close to them, and kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, I believe, and lots of family.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
I do have lots of family and parents both are staying of them a lot, but it's a lifestyle business that you can manage your time around and your business around. I still plan to coach. People do call me. They call me for editing jobs. So I still love doing that. And that's how I spend most of my time. And fortunately, we have the technology that to do that now. I know when there's an emergency, like yesterday, my dad fell yesterday morning, and I had to go over there at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that sort of changes things. And my dad or mom either feel times and they say, gee, I'm taking you away from your work. And I just pick up my phone and say, this is my office. As long as I have a phone, I'm talking to clients, I'm coaching, and I can make it work. So that's why I love the entrepreneurial lifestyle. That's all I've known, but I do love it because you're in control of your destiny, you're in control of your success, you're in control of your time, you're in control of your goals.
would you like to talk a little bit about your latest book? Because that's always I just talked to a guy that I'm working with, and he just spent a couple days reorganizing his whole email setup because he just had them piling up in his inbox, and it was causing stress and disorganization. Um,
Yes, that book on email writing. I've written three other books on writing as well, but the way this is different, it focuses just on email and the bigger issues. Not we know now, don't type your whole email in capital letters. We went through those etiquette things a long time ago and said that shouting, don't do it. But what I tried to address here in this book are things that we do that are not productive, things that affect decision making. For example, people often sit down and say, well, I need to do email right quick. And they think of it as a task to get through. And, and it should be a fast response for most situations. But sometimes people respond too quickly. A colleague says, what do you think about this project? Here's how I'm approaching it. And they respond right quick with an idea like this or try that. But if they'd given it's more or less a knee-jerk response. If they had given it a little more thought, they could have responded more completely and also made a sounder decision, a better decision by taking a little time. So I talk, about more psychology of writing. And you know how we copy people. Everybody in the world, we don't want their feelings to be hurt, so we copy them. A lot of people, it affects their productivity because they keep their email open all the time. It's just constantly open. So every time it ding, it's like Pavlov's dog. There's a ding, they go look at their email. That breaks their train of thought on. So there are a lot of just productivity tips there that I talk about in that book. But one that I wrote probably a decade ago that's still selling more than either any of the other two, it was on executive presence, creating personal presence. And I talked about 20 tips for making sure that when you walk in a room, people notice. And I don't mean notice negatively. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can get attention, but notice your authority, notice your ability to express yourself completely, clearly, persuasively on a topic. When you open your mouth, they listen. Those qualities are intangible to many people, but they can be learned. And I had in that book, Creating Personal Presence, Look, Talk, Think, and Act Like a Leader. I put all those intangibles into 4 buckets. Your appearance, your posture, how you move, facial expressions, and then how you speak, how well you persuade and put your ideas together, and then how you interact with people. The last one, when I say look, talk, think, and act like a leader, you can't teach somebody to be honest. You can't teach somebody to have integrity. You can't teach them to accomplish whatever field, whatever goal they have in a new field that you don't know. So you can't teach that part of it. But those first 3 parts, how you look, talk, and think, those are about expressing yourself well, whether it's body language or otherwise. And that book still sells really, really well because everybody needs it. If you're an entrepreneur, you're in business for yourself, you're in sales. I mean, we've all heard that expression. Everybody's in sales. Really, anybody who's facing the customer in whatever role needs to have that kind of personal presence, and they can learn that. So I really enjoy coaching on that as well.
One of the things that we worked on when we worked together was the process of really clarifying what a message is or what a point is through writing. And it's something my father taught me. Maybe I needed to be taught again, or but you really help with that because that's something I practice now. If I can't write it down and say it well, then I really don't know exactly what I'm trying to do or what my goal is or aspiration. And so there's tremendous
That's true.
value.
I'm glad you mentioned that. In fact, yesterday somebody had put together, it's called Money Control, I think is the name of the website. But it popped into my box yesterday because they had quoted me that they had picked out the best 10 communication books on communication and put together this list. And they used a quote that they'd mangled. They'd done it. This was published also in another country, in another language. I had to use the translate button. But that quote from that book has been used more often and quoted on more sites than anything I've ever written. It was one sentence, and the sentence was, if you can't write your message in a sentence, you can't say it in an hour. And that's what I found when I'm coaching people about writing their book. Their idea is still fuzzy in their mind. Their expertise is still, well, I could do this, but I could do that. I could take this approach. I could take that angle. And if they can't actually write it down in a sentence, and I mentioned that in email writing as well, if you can't write your message in a sentence, even if you're sending out a marketing proposal, if you can't write your message in a sentence, you can stand up and talk about it for an hour and it still won't be clear because it's a thinking problem. It's not really a writing problem, it's a thinking problem. And so, yes, I spend a lot of time coaching people on getting very clear, very focused on what their book idea might be, or if they're writing a proposal, what that proposal idea, how they're marketing it with that client. What is that message? It can't be all over the place. It has to be very focused.
Well said. I imagine you can say that in a sentence like you did over and over again. People are quoting you. Um, what are some things that you might want to wrap up on? I mean, we've already talked about quite a lot. Find something that you like, start with that or love. Some lessons about presence. There's a lot of good books they could read to get all this input, which I hope they will. And we talked about how you really overcame a huge challenge. There you were by yourself with two kids, your husband, post-traumatic stress syndrome. I know the story, so tough time. And out of that, you built this tremendous life. And not that you didn't have a good life before that, but at that particular moment, it was pretty dire. And so there's hope for people when there's a tough time. Um,
And we all go through challenges. It might be a health challenge, it might be a bankruptcy in your business, it could be a new stage in your life when you have to take care of small grandchild that has no one else. I mean, there are all kinds of things that we face, but there's always a way to teach yourself. I mean, there's so much written out there. If you're inclined to go find it, whether it's on YouTube or looking at blogs on websites, to hire the best people. Because as I said, I didn't want to be a manager. Didn't start out to build a company. It just sort of happened because of the books when they came out. I found myself very weak in the skills to run a business, to pick out the best hire. And so I depended on a couple of mentors. I mentioned earlier, one was vice president of engineering at an major oil company, and the other vice president of engineering at a supply company. And they both gave me very good pointers on how to get the best people. But I certainly made bad hires in this multi-decade career. I certainly made some bad hires. And then you hate to disappoint and have to let someone go, because that's an investment that you've just lost if you've tried to train them and teach them your industry. So that's one of the most important things, is to try to have some kind of mentorship going for you if you don't have those skills. I know you have excellent education in business and finance, Henry, but not everybody does that. I certainly, mentors were invaluable.
Wow, what a good wrap up. Appreciation for mentors, looking for mentors, and continuous learning, and fantastic. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to conclude on, but what a great inspiration you are to me and to so many people.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Thank you.